which that kind of led up to the weekend with the Mr. Metokur stream. Which the Mr. Metokur stream, there's copies out there. There's a lot of people will repost his streams. So you can easily find it by searching Mr. Metokur and the date, which would be May 25th. But I kind of wanted to pull this specific segment because even in all this stuff, so Metokur kind of went over like a summarized history of Rakieta. And in
Hmm.
all of that, like this part actually hit me the most because this is the most upset I think I've ever heard Metokur. Like genuinely like let down upset, not angry upset. I've heard him angry upset. I think he's like disappointed parent when it came to this.
Nick Rakieta started his career as a humble family man that grew into wild success with an audience of 100,000 plus, making buku bucks. He was beloved by many people, supported by an extraordinary amount of people. Came out with a format that was unique and interesting and got a lot of people their YouTube channels. A lot of YouTubers blew up because of him. Was on the cusp of success and greatness with Netflix and with television and with the news. He was one of the people that really could have parlayed it into something incredible. But that success allowed his vices to take control of him. And these legal proceedings, whether they're true or not, have given you a glimpse behind the curtain, so to speak. Because you could take away all of this. You could take away the warrant. You could say it was bullshit and fraudulent and it should never have been. He could find a great argument to get out of any legal repercussions. They could say that the mandatory reporter was misinformed. They could find something. But the fact of the matter is, you still now know that a mistress was living there. You still now know that they had ketamine and cocaine in their possession, that their fucking house was a disheveled mess, that there are guns all over the fucking place, that there's spent shell casings all over the fucking place. As you see him descend deeper and deeper into drinking, you've watched a man throw away his success because this isn't even a midlife crisis. This isn't somebody wanting to sow their wild oats because they missed out on the opportunity. You had it all lined up for you, man. It was all there waiting for you to take it to the next level. You could have done amazing things.
And by the way, Jim and I had talked, and he pointed this out, and it's very very true. And I feel like you're hearing it a little bit right here. That Nick Rekieta had everything that Mr. Metokur ever wanted. He had the kids, he had the house, he had the good health, he had everything. And this guy took everything that Jim doesn't have, positive, and threw it the fuck away. And I think that's where a lot of this disappointment and hurt comes from Miss Metokur because he championed this guy so hard too.
Mm-hmm. And instead, you wanted to get high and get drunk and fuck sluts, and it's costing you everything. Your hubris and your ego about this are costing you. I'm not here to talk about the constitutionality of free speech and what you should be able to call Montegraph or not, but I would ask the question, was it worth it? Was it worth putting that financial burden and hardship over your own head and your family's? I'm not here to talk about whether or not an open relationship in a marriage is a good or a bad thing, but was it worth it? Seeing the destruction of Aaron and April's marriage and the effect that it's going to have on your marriage. I'm not here to talk.
And I will say, I genuinely do not think Nick gives a single fuck about the fact that he destroyed somebody else's marriage, let alone the pain that he's caused his own kids. I genuinely don't.
Talk about whether or not somebody should be a daily drinker or if they can be a functional alcoholic. But I'm going to ask you, was it worth it? Getting shit-faced drunk every night and watching your numbers diminish and your fan base shrink and your support go away? And I'm not going to sit here and talk about whether or not it's right or wrong to do illicit substances, whether that's shit that just got legalized in Minnesota like marijuana or completely illegal things like ketamine and cocaine. But again, I'll ask you, was it worth it? Having the police knock down your
True, Freddie. Very true.
door and scare the shit out of your kids. Having your wife have to go through a booking proceeding. Having to be embarrassed in front of the internet. Was any of this shit worth it? You stood at the precipice of success and you threw it away. For what? Momentary pleasure. You get a little high, you get a little drunk, you get your cock sucked, and your life falls apart. You threw away the idyllic American dream for what? 5 minutes of pleasure? To all those people out there that want to get big in YouTube, this is a good example of really what not to do. Right now, VTubing is becoming a big thing. A lot of VTubers out there are killing it. And great, good on them. I love it. People like Peppa and Kirsch and all of them. Go out and cultivate your fan base, make your product, build your brand, make your money, and plan for your future. Don't get caught up in how famous or popular you are. Put your fucking money away. Buy a house, buy a car. Because by the time your curve is done in 3 or 4 or 5 years, you'll be so far ahead of the game. You'll be set on not having to worry about rent, not having to worry about mortgage, not having to worry about a car or debt or bullshit. You'll be able to live your life how you want to live it. You'll have a chance at that idyllic American dream. Don't do what Nick did.
I just want to pause it there for a second because I do want to point out to anybody that didn't see this stream and doesn't know, this was a 4-hour stream. Mind you, I'm on hour 10:30, 11:30, 12:30, 1:30. I'm on hour 4 right now. I'm going to be fine to go through a majority of what I have left before I do a part 2 on this. This guy is sitting here, did a 4-hour stream, and he's terminally ill. He had several broken ribs during this stream. And he went on and did 4 hours. And I feel like a lot of that was out of spite and fuck you to the guy that he tried to help out so much. The guy that had everything and threw it away. And I feel like this was the most poignant goddamn moment in the whole fucking stream. And this was not Mr. Metokur. This was not Internet Aristocrat. This was Jim, your friend. This is a guy that spent a long time on the internet trying to help others out because he knows he doesn't have long left. And I think he realizes that, the people I've tried to help out privately have not always been the best. So maybe the 20,000 people that I'm talking to right now, which that's right, this man did a stream on multiple broken ribs, terminally ill, to 20,000 fucking people. And he put out some of the best fucking advice that I've ever heard come out of anybody's mouth. Saying shit that is true. I mean, it's just genuinely fucking true. So take this to heart, whether it's YouTube streaming or anything else. Everything's fleeting. It's never going to last forever.
Don't let your ego get the better of you. Don't give in to the momentary dick suckings and cocaine binges and alcohol benders because you're popular for the moment. Don't let those daydream fantasies of revenge against people that told you you'd never make it overtake your rationality. Don't do what this guy did. Otherwise, it's going to be you in the booking photo. And you don't want that. You don't want to be the mugshot. Nobody does. You don't want to be Nick Rakieta with a black eye and people asking, why is his wife getting charged for physical abuse of the children? Why is a woman living in his house? Why is he so drunk? Why were there drugs found? Why was there guns found? Do you think this is something that's easily repaired, Nick? Or anybody watching this? It's not. The damage that's been done from this week alone will have repercussions throughout the rest of your life. It will be the underpinning of any argument you and your wife have about who's responsible for it and how badly things got fucked up. It will affect your relationship with your homeschooling group and your church and your neighborhood and your neighbors, because you'll be the guy whose mugshot they saw, and they'll hear all these fucking stories, and whether or not they're true or how true they are or how factually accurate they are or how far off the mark they are, they'll still know they found a bunch of coke and ketamine and fucking guns. They'll still know some chick you were banging was living there, and they'll ask themselves, what kind of neighbor is this guy? And how fucking reliable is he? I just don't get it. I don't know what happened, man. You really were one of the people that had the best chance, Nick. You really were. You really had the best chance of turning it into something amazing. And just it I don't know why you've thrown it away. And I don't understand that I can't comprehend why you've thrown it away for so little. You traded it in for so little. You took something that had the potential to grant you an amazing life and you pissed it away for nothing. And that's what makes me lean towards there really being a problem with alcohol or drugs. Because no rational person that's sober would do that. But an addict would. They wouldn't be able to weigh the pros and cons, the benefits and the penalties. They'd be living in the now. They'd care about that dopamine hit more than anything else. This isn't even me moral fagging. I'm not trying to get preachy with you. I'm genuinely fucking confused. I know you've got a lot of people you talk to. You've got friends and different associates in real life and online. None of them grabbed you by the arm and said, stop? Or the ones that did you pay them no heed?
No.
You never woke up one morning hungover feeling like shit with a black eye like you're in your mugshot and say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want my life to be this. I can do better than this. You had so much going for you. Your kids would have grown up and said, that's my dad on television. That guy is my dad, and he's on TV because he's smart and he's successful and he's motivated, and people fucking love the shit that he does. That's where you were. They would have been going to school and bragging. Now what the fuck are they going to say? Oh, yeah, that's my dad in the mugshot. Why would you throw it away, man? Why would you piss that away? I just don't get it. I really don't. Few people are offered the opportunity to have that kind of success. And you really were smart in how you did it. I try not to take that away from you, especially when I talked about it before. A lot of people say, oh, people have done legal shit on the internet before. They've done law tube stuff before. They have. But that was your idea. The way you did it, the format, the flow of it, the feel of it, that was you, man. That was your creative energy behind it. That was your chance to brand it and capitalize on it and fucking be a rising star with it. And you chose to throw it away. And I just don't fucking understand it. I just don't get it. I hope I hope there's not abuse shit going on with the kids. I hope that the fucking mandatory reporter brought up concerns that were just related to drug use. I hope there's not crazy shit that's going to come out, man, because I don't know if I can take it. I really don't. Because you don't strike me as a piece of shit, Nick. You don't. You don't strike me as a bad person. You never have. And it would be heartbreaking if that turns out to be false. That would fuck me up. If it was Ethan Ralph or some other piece of shit on the internet, I wouldn't be surprised, but I would with you. Maybe I just bought hook, line, and sinker the bullshit at the beginning. The humble family man. I don't know. But that's who I saw you as being, that's who I thought you really were. And I still hope that you really are. But like I said at the beginning, you can't tell an alcoholic or a drug addict to fix themselves because they won't. They have to decide to do it. And no matter what you think rock bottom is, they have to decide what it is. For some people, rock bottom is a mild inconvenience. It's running out of money when they need it, or it's being in a bit of an uncomfortable situation. For other people, it's being completely homeless and covered in shit until it's rock bottom. I don't know what yours is. One would hope this is. So I don't know. It's depressing. It's just depressing. It's depressing to see potential fall apart like that. And to see something that seems so good, at least on the outside, crumble apart. You're such an idiot, man. You're such a fucking idiot. I wish you the best, Nick. I do. I hope you get through it. I hope you fix yourself. I hope you're. I hope you can fix this. Because it would be sad to see a good family torn apart over shit like this. And it's shit that's going to live with your family, um, with your kids and your wife, and it's not going to go away. But it is something you could repair if you put the effort into it. And I don't know if you'll ever see the same success you saw on YouTube again, but you could still climb back, and you could still have a happy life. You could still have that ideal life that most people seem to strive for. And I just hope that you're not stupid enough to not try. I hope that you're smart enough to understand that you could get it if you really put in the effort. I don't know what started this all. I don't know why you decided to go down the path that you did. But I think, based on my interactions with you, that you're a better man than that, and that you could still fix it. I know it's easy for a lot of people to shit on you and just do it unrepentantly, and that's fine. I'm not here to judge. Everybody's got their own opinion. But I can't reconcile what you are now with what I was introduced to. And I hope that there's still a piece of that in you, and that that piece wins out. And that there aren't more mugshots. Rather, Christmas cards from the family than mugshots, Nick, is what you should be aiming for. So, best of luck. I really hope there's not kid shit involved in this. Um, and I don't know what else to say. Sorry, folks. I don't have like a eloquent ender for you. That was a real ender for you. And
That was the heart of Jim's message. I kind of wanted to let that play pretty unimpeded, and I had this planned, and I kind of want to say now that what Jim's talking about is very, very, very true. And I will tell you about me being 21 and realizing when my first rock bottom was. And that was, doing the same shit that Nick was doing without the alcohol and the swinging. And I ended up having to go meet the connection for for uh, for my buyer, like because I was buying a pretty decent amount repetitively, and they wanted to make sure that I wasn't a cop. And I walked in this apartment, and I didn't leave the apartment for 24 hours. And they were armed, and I was to sit there and do drugs, talk with them, and until they felt comfortable with me. And that's the kind of shit that when I did that, I realized, the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm literally stuck here. If I left, I was worried, like, what was going to happen? Was I going to be followed? Would they then know where I live and everything else? So I stayed, and I stayed put, and I did what I had to do to get through the situation. And you know what? Thankfully for me, it was do drugs and watch TV. But it was enough of a wake up call to realize that I didn't want to be in that situation again. And so, yeah, I mean, rock bottom does look different for a lot of different people. It could be going absolutely for broke. I think for Nick, I think it's going to be losing a lot more than what he's already lost.
I mean, I do have a similar story, but it's from the opposite end.
Oh,
I
really?
was the reason for one of my family members hitting rock bottom.
Really?
Technically, my cousin, him and his dad had like a drinking problem, and I was there for one of their fights, and I stepped in between them, and my cousin threw a punch at me, and we just went at it.
Oh, shit.
And apparently I put like the fear of God in him just by staring him down and pinning him to the floor. And and he's like he said he had like nightmares where my face would like appear before him, like holding him down and shit, like I was choking him out.
Yeah.
And he said that's what motivated him to quit because he apparently he saw like fucking like God's wrath through me or something.
Yeah.
I it's just crazy. Like some of those events do happen, and I don't know. It's like I had another buddy who never really hit rock bottom, and there are like some really degrading stories. Like even after I tried getting him, to stick with like AA,
Yeah.
like I drove him to different meetings and whatnot, and then he got drunk one night and got pulled over, and he was held in a psychiatric ward for like 2 days, and then he was released, got drunk again, and then he was in jail. Now, one of my other cousins, a female cousin, was like working at the county jail,
Yeah.
and some of the stories that she'd tell us, like what he was doing in there, it's like they had a nickname for him. They called him Gingy, the
Yep.
gingerbread man from like
Yep.
Shrek. They nicknamed him Gingy, and he'd be in there like coming down off of the fucking when he's having his alcoholic relapses or whatever,
Yep.
like the symptoms, and he would just be like, and this is the thing is, he's like in a room by himself, and they're looking in through the door hole or like the window, like the bulletproof glass,
Yep.
because they had to seclude him from other like people in the jail. He's in there like furiously masturbating and giving them the finger.
Fuck. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if Nick Rakieta is going to be doing that, but
I
it's.
mean, he's not far from it right now. Oh my god.
But yeah, that was like when I first heard that, I was like, the fuck? I didn't know how to react to it because at first I felt like I wanted to laugh. And I'm like, that's just fucking weird. That's just like
Yeah.
fucking dumb. Like how far people will go.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, no, I know with that moment, like when I knew I was like, I'm done with this stuff, I ended up moving back home shortly after that. I came clean to my parents. I was like, hey, so I've been doing this shit. And they're like, okay. And they're like, do you still do it? I'm like, nope, not doing it anymore. And I spent the next 10 days going through fucking hell because, like I told you, I speedballed when I did my shit. So I was doing oxys on top of doing coke. So I came down off of
Yeah.
heroin withdrawals on top. Well, technically heroin. It's an opioid withdrawal, but opioid withdrawal on top of coming off of cocaine. And I was doing moderate use. Like I said, I was using, I think, around a gram or a gram and a half every like couple days. Like I was doing basically like an 8 ball a week. And yeah, it sucked. Like I was sick. I had like the worst flu ever. I was trying to, like, there's that moment where you're like you would do anything to not feel that way, and I had to go through that. Would I tell anybody to do that? Like, was it the smartest idea? No. No. Don't go through it that way. It's not fun. It's probably easier to go through it and get medicated and at least come through it that way and take a de-escalate a little bit. But yeah, I'll never forget how I felt. Like every minute of it, like still is vivid. Like
Yeah.
just
I
for
mean,
every good moment and every like goddamn, like I had some of the best coke ever feelings to how I felt at that moment. It cancels out pretty quick.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy just watching like someone else go through the shit, but at the same time, it's like probably even crazier having to go through it yourself.
Yeah, when you're like exhausted feeling and you can't sleep, you're sick to your stomach, and you like you're like I didn't know how to explain it because I've gone through it twice because I had pain pill issues again. I was put on basically the equivalent of Dilaudid in pill form. It was hydromorphone, and morphine mixed together. And I remember even coming through that and everything else again that much later. Like you literally like it. People make fun of people and they're like, "There's bugs under my skin." Like it almost feels like that. You literally feel your skin feels like it's crawling. Like imagine
Well,
like deep,
yeah,
deep subdermal like muscle irritation, like itching and kind of like discomfort that you'll do anything to try and rub away or scratch away to get it to not feel that way.
yeah. I mean, that's basically like your nerve endings. Like, how should I put it? It's almost kind of like with diabetics where they have nerve death in their feet.
Yep.
What's the term for it?
Oh,
Uh,
I know what you're talking about.
uh,
Because I'm actually on a
sure.
diabetic nerve medication, but just as a
Yeah,
replacement for
it's
that shit.
yeah. I'm
Neuropathy.
trying to. Yeah, neuropathy. That basically, from what I've heard, like from everybody who's like gone through that shit, it sounds a lot like neuropathy,
Yeah.
except it's like all over your body, not just like located at your feet.
Okay, please stop. I'm sorry, Belinda. Sorry that got deep for a second. But no, I try to like advocate like as far as like I don't want anybody to go through that stuff, and like I went through stuff both sides of it. So I went through the medical side was the second round where I was like, no, I'm getting addicted to this stuff. Like when I'm starting to like snort pills and stuff again, I'm like, no, this is not a good road to be going down. And like I had a lot to lose at that point because I had a job and had everything, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to go through this again. And um yeah, tried to go the right route that time. That was fucked up. I basically ended up blackballed from seeing any medication, like seeing any doctor to get help. I'm like, well, this is just as equally fucked up. So now you guys are forcing me to go cold turkey this way. I'm like, instead of getting like sent to like, like to getting like Suboxone or something like that to help deal with everything and deal with the symptoms and all that shit. I was forced to go through it cold turkey again. At least I knew what to expect. Like, but it was still like just as fucking bad. And that's why I'm on gabapentin now because I won't take any opioids. I just won't even do it. I like it's not a matter of like I think I'm tougher than that. No. I've got chronic pain. I have to take a pain med. And after a shit ton of research, and this was really before gabapentin was kind of seen as an alternative drug, I was like, no, I want to be on this medication because I feel like this could possibly help me. And I don't have to go through and be on an opioid, which the opioid shit, all that fucking shit is just it's the same as any other drug I've been on before, where like you have to keep increasing dosages, or the other alternative to it is if you get smart and you realize that you force yourself to go through mini withdrawals, you can keep a lower dose for longer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fucked up. Don't do that, people. Take Tylenol. Kill your liver instead.
At least you could replace your liver.
Yeah. Oh man. How about them Jews? Jesus Christ. Well, one other thing I wanted to touch on before I ended, because the last four videos are more pertaining towards the interview that Kino Casino had with Aaron, and then they had it with Sean, which that's a long stream. That's a 5-hour stream. And then I have two other videos that go over from Nate the lawyer, and I really liked how he covered stuff. And as far as like the police report and everything else, um, so I'm gonna cover those probably on another stream. I might do it tomorrow. I might do it during the week. But one thing I hear talked about a lot with all this is the disbarment. Like, is Nick Rakieta gonna get disbarred? And I realize that this information is coming from Wikipedia, but it's also been backed up by the fact of people like Sean and a couple other lawyers. I think Legal Mindset even talked about it. Nick's probably not going to get disbarred. he'll probably get suspended, and it might be a suspension with oh, what's the goddamn word I'm thinking of? Like stipulations in order to be reinstated. So he may have to go through drug treatment. He may have to be on drug treatment for so long in order to get fully reinstated. It might be conditional kind of thing, but he won't get disbarred.
Well,
This
I
is
mean,
what they're saying really is disbarment, and this kind of agreed with what I saw was that you have to really mess with client money before you'll be really considered for disbarment.
that's the thing. It's like he could actually force the issue himself given his current behavior.
Yeah,
I mean, if he
yeah,
really does have ODD, and that's like going to be the excuse from this Megan Fox chick and the Star Wars girl and whatnot,
yeah.
it's, I mean, he's basically pushing that fucking scale in favor of disbarment by doing this shit.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I mean, not just like in the immediate aftermath of the withdrawals, but basically how he's been generally behaving before and afterwards. Like, I mean, fucking around and like violating and trying to use the law in your uh, purview in order to win a defamation case, and like, something that you should know already shows like fucking irresponsibility on top of the drugs and the general behavior that he exhibits. I don't think he's going to be a lawyer for long, especially if he gets convicted or pleads out.
That was the one thing that I haven't heard a whole lot of feedback on is if he gets convicted of these. So it goes from a charge to an actual convicted felon or whatever. If he's able to keep his law license in, I think he would get disbarred.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like even if you're a convicted felon, you can still like, be a lawyer or at least somewhat of a, how should I put this? Have you ever heard of G. Gordon Liddy?
Yeah.
Okay, like what he went to prison for, right?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I know the name. I can't remember the charge.
It deals with Watergate and Nixon. He was the
Okay.
guy
Okay. Yep.
who basically had the president's ear and never snitched,
Yep.
and that's how he got like his prison reputation. While he was in prison, he basically became a lawyer for all the prisoners and had like their their sentences reduced or got them better like facilities and shit like that, and that's how he like became like the number one, you know, person in prison where the prisoners would go to address grievances. And he had gotten, I think he got himself a law degree while in prison and was able to practice it.
Oh, really?
Like, being able to file appeals on behalf of prisoners and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are certain cases, but he wasn't a lawyer beforehand, so I don't know.
Yeah, and see, and I never knew if all that really held water because, like, I
Or no, wait, he
know.
was he was a lawyer beforehand. I forgot. He was a
Okay.
lawyer beforehand because he had served as a prosecutor and in a small town up in Massachusetts or somewhere around in that area in the Northeast, and then he became like a sheriff of sorts, in which he would try to do drug busts and whatnot. I don't know if he got his license suspended or if he went through a process of renewing it while in prison.
Okay.
But I mean, the whole thing with Nick is like he could push the, it's like his whole mentality is pushing the envelope. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be riding the razor's fucking edge until it breaks to where they will have to take away his license.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he would get that or if he would go through like a suspension, like if they would really disbar him or if they would just suspend his license indefinitely until he can prove himself worthy of being unsuspended and or being on a conditional suspension.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
just thinking like the way how he's behaving now, like I don't think it all can be excused away with drugs because he is naturally without the drugs before him, what I've seen, he is a bit hot-headed and confrontational too.
yeah. Oh yeah, he
So
definitely is.
So I could see him like literally just fucking around and then like losing it all, even if he doesn't get convicted.
I think he's gonna lose interest in it if he gets the charges. To be honest, I really do. I think he'll. It's kind of hard too because somebody else, one of the other legal individuals in law too, brought up a good point. This is his livelihood too. The streaming is his livelihood. I mean, other than being a trust fund kid, whatever. But
Yeah.
like, this is how he makes his money. So it kind of becomes a really interesting thought experiment, if you want to even call it that, of like, okay, so he made his money by being a law tuber. And if he's not able to practice law, would that impact his earning potential? And then if so, what does he do? And if he's convicted
Um.
of felony, like I know that I've gone over on the previous stream, he had financial backing, like a financial background. I don't know if he would be able to really get into any financial like institutions or anything with felonies if he gets convicted of them.
Well, I don't know. The whole thing I'm thinking of is like, yeah, most of his income now is coming through streaming, but the kind of streaming he does or what he did do that made him most of his money had to deal with law. And given how his current behavior, uh, I mean, just in regards to the fucking warrant and shit and what Barnes and has been doing, it's going to scuttle his fucking credibility
Yeah.
regardless. Because I mean, this is a guy who knew the law and chose to choose to break it regardless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that really plays to like one of the factors of being a streamer is that you don't have to be morally upright. You just have to be morally consistent. You can't just be a fucking hypocrite. And given how his morals were predicated not just on like the Christian faith and whatnot, it was also predicated on him being an upstanding citizen who obeys the fucking law.
Yeah.
So that's like a factor, and I think that's going to hit him if he does lose his license. It's going to be like a multiplying effect on just him like fleeing out or even getting convicted.
Mm-hmm.
So it will hurt his ability to make money,
Oh
unless
yeah.
if the fucking nose guards have like no fucking wits about them. They just keep funneling him that shit.
I think there'll be a small portion of us. So basically, what I see Nick Rekieta becoming, especially if convicted, is he's gonna lose a lot of legal credibility. I mean, who's gonna listen to a guy who was a former lawyer who's now been convicted of felonies on his own talk about the moralities and legal aspects of a case? I mean, nobody's really gonna trust that the same. So then he basically
Yeah,
will ultimately be a DSP for LawTube.
well, I mean that's the thing. It's Jim brings up a good point that he's a lolcow. He'll have to lean into the online stuff in order to make a buck.
Yeah,
But like the cases that he did before, they were like morally questionable, like the shit with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp when it came to domestic violence and who was actually in the wrong versus like, constant smear attacks in the media. And given how Nick Rekieta is going around trying to smear other people
yep.
uh, after he's been released because they don't want to take his side on shit. I mean, it's pretty apparent that he's a hypocrite on that end. Then it comes to the Rittenhouse trial, which was more or less just like the government trying to railroad a kid,
Yeah,
which which already has like its moral implications. And as far as Nick was arguing, it's like, yeah, the government's going to fuck you either way, and he's probably, because we've already seen Barnes do this, but he's going to say that there is some kind of government conspiracy coming at him, regardless if it's coke fueled or not.
yeah,
He's going to put himself in a position where he tries to make it out to be like another Rittenhouse case, because I mean, This does involve like family, guns, and drugs. However, he's going to focus on like, oh, they came after me because I had drugs, but my guns were like completely locked up and whatnot. I was a responsible, gun owner.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many ways how he could spin it, and he's already been spinning and twisting shit. It's just, I don't see why they would allow him to keep his license because it doesn't look like he's going to practice anytime soon. I mean, fuck it. Ethan Ralph pointed it out. It's like, I've had more experience in the court than fucking Nick Rakieta did. And that's because like Ethan Ralph is a convicted felon.
You know, the other side of it, kind of going off of what you're talking about, Jim, where like he would have to spin it into the anti-government libertarian politics, saying that he's been a victim of the system. I don't know if he would have to play the victim portion, but if he
Well,
didn't play his cards right, I could see him. But again, you're talking about a dying sector. I could see him trying to pull basically like a Destiny thing and getting into debate on stuff. That would probably be the only lose your law license but still keep a streaming career that he might be able to pull out of this, in my opinion. I mean, there's other nuances to it, obviously, but
I mean, that's another thing. It's just like the whole. I mean, he is kind of playing the victim. It's like, no, this is specific animus from one person directed towards me, and they're using the government as the weapon against me.
yeah.
I mean, he's already going on that bent, and Barnes is like, no, it's just the government. They're a bunch of pansies. You don't have to let your kids eat and whatnot. And it's just,
Yeah, I
it,
don't I don't
I
think
mean,
that's going to be the way to do it. I think what I saw from uh Dick Masterson, as much as I don't like the guy, I will give him that I thought he did better in the debate against Stardust than Stardust did. And that he did argue a couple really good points where like uh God, I'm trying to think of how he said it. Um where there's like it wasn't a standard process, kind of going off of what you said. Instead of like the mandatory reporters reporting this directly to the police, instead the mandatory reporter reported it to the pastor, and then the pastor gathered up all this stuff and then reported it to police, and then the police then used that in a warrant against him instead of it going on to CPS. And what the standard
well,
process should have been versus what happened, he could play that.
I mean, the whole thing is that the pastor was a mandatory reporter himself.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
and that's
that's
where
the
Dick
one
was kind of
thing.
saying like the teacher or the superintendent, whatever she was also a mandatory reporter and shouldn't have reported it to him. Should have actually gone directly to the police themselves. In which case, it still would have had the same gravity, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're going to go like, which branch led where and like which
Yeah,
vein is to poke, like for the source, it still doesn't matter. It's all like the same story at the end of the day. Like,
yeah,
I mean, literally, Dick, his fucking argument is a splitting hairs kind of situation where it's like, even if the preschool teacher or the Sunday school teacher was a mandatory reporter, they may have to like get a second opinion before they actually do anything. I mean, that's only natural for people to do
yeah,
outside of a position. It's like they would confer with other mandatory court reporters because it's like, look, I go to them with this. It's like I could be wrong. However, it's just like let's check notes. Let's see if like what else has happened. Like, have you guys heard anything? I mean, it's like going to the police with one thing, like just the kids saying that they were hungry and that they smell bad, and it came from the preschool teacher. I don't think that they would be knocking down Nick Rekieta's door.
no, I think it was the
However,
totality of this situation,
yeah,
definitely.
and that's the thing. It's like that's where the actions of the other court reporters come in handy. It's because they basically check their bases and we're seeing like, well, what else have you noticed? Like, let's pay attention to them. Let's get more than like what we see here because we definitely know that there's a problem with the kids or from what we've dealt with them. But is that a problem on whether or not it's the parents or if it's just them not
Yeah.
wanting to like bathe and shit.
Yeah, and that's something that I kind of even talked to Jim about. I'm like, if I were to sit here and I were to argue, I would say, okay, to what degree? Because one of Masterson's arguments was, well, it's not unnatural for a kid to watch their younger siblings. No, it's not. I've done that. I've watched my younger siblings. I know people that are younger siblings that have been watched by their older siblings. Like, it happens. It's kind of a normal function. Like, I get that. Babysitters are a thing. I understand that. The thing that I would have gone at Dick a bit different about that Stardust, I was kind of disappointed that she didn't think to go about it this way, is at what point does it go from just babysitting once in a while to now they're cooking
You
and they're
know,
caring on top of their own schooling, on top of their own extracurriculars. And then what happens when you got, especially when you got kids that are in multiple like schooling levels? I'm not even talking about grade levels. I'm talking about like middle school, elementary school, and high school, which is the situation you had here. You're going to have
yeah, and
overlapping activities, extracurricular
yeah,
activities.
not to mention like the different age ranges here. Like you got 6 to 16. Like
Yeah.
some of these are already going through puberty and they're having their hormones fucked with naturally through the process. Like,
Yeah.
what are they going to make like heads or tails of a situation? They're about as confused, with what's going on, like generally because of the hormones acting in.
Well, and then
But the
there's
other
also the
thing,
additional thing, like what happens in an emergency situation? These kids aren't necessarily going to make the correct judgment call, but then you have uh, parents that are under the influence of a drug potentially or alcohol, and are they going to be able to also make the same right decisions, because like they kept
yeah,
bringing up
like
like this, what if the kid broke a leg and how would they pack
yeah,
them up and drive them and everything else, and that's not the case. Like, what if the kid doesn't know or wasn't watching them, and then something
or
happens, and like the kid's not going to know necessarily to call 911, do CPR. They could go into full lockdown shock and not move. I've seen adults do that.
yeah, that's another thing. It's like, I mean, even bar the extreme side, like if someone like fell off a trampoline or something, broke their leg or cracked their tooth or whatever, and
Yeah.
they're bleeding and shit, it's just like, impulse would be to get an adult. Well, what if the adults are like trying
Inebriated.
to take
Yeah.
care of it? Yeah, or if they can't even respond to the situation.
Yeah.
It's like that leads to neighbors calling 911 after hearing bloody murder across the street.
Yeah.
I mean, that would just be another way for like Nick Rekieta to get arrested and like this whole,
Maybe back
haranguing
to
over the
here.
mandate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like either way this played out, the drugs, the guns, the alcohol, and all the fucking horse shit, it doesn't matter what got the cops in the door. It could be a multiple of factors.
Well, and
It
then
could have been a multiple of different scenarios. It's just that
another
even if
thing
you get the
that's
warrant thrown out, everything else is true.
another thing that's addressed in the police report, not so much the warrant affidavit, but now in the police report, which is going to be a stickler no matter what, which is where I don't see this being an effective argument, is it lists that the oldest two go to actual school. So
Yeah,
from
that's
what I
another thing.
understand, you have 5 kids. You have a 6-year-old, a I think want to say like 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 16-year-old. I don't know where the other kid falls on the age spectrum. I'm gonna guess like probably
I think it's
7,
8.
8. Okay, so all right, you have the oldest two. So your 16 and your 12-year-old are gone. So now you've got a 6 year
10,
old, a
8,
10
and
year
a
old, an 8 year
6.
old. Okay, who is the real responsible person in that situation? Then you also got the 10-year-old that's also going to school. So now you've got a 6 year old and an 8 year old. Okay, and if the parents are messed up and those kids are in school, what happens there? Suddenly the parents are, it's not their responsibility. Like, these kids are old enough to take care of themselves. I wouldn't trust
And you know
this
what? That's
8 year old watching a
that's the
6 year
other
old
thing.
all the time.
That's the other thing is like Nick Rekieta made a statement, and this is like something that's going to be held against him because it brings like a family member into the fucking mix again. Is that you remember what he was saying in that group chat? Like his father had drove the kids to their
Yeah, yeah,
extracurriculars. Like He's going to be brought in. The father, like the grandfather, not
Yep.
the father. You know, the grandfather is going to be brought in and is like, "Did you notice that they were malnourished? That they smell or any of this shit?"
Yep.
It's like, how far did you know? Like, you know, was going on in that household? Because according to Nick, you were, you know, the parent in charge of making sure they got to where they needed to go.
Yeah, but then he's also contradicted himself on stream where he said that, oh, we have to drive the kids everywhere and everything. And that was apparently, remember, the whole benefit of having the Amoltes there in the household is now they got a set of hands to help them out.
Yeah.
And that's going back to even like the Dear John stream. I remember that. Like he was bitching about the fact that like, oh, we got to drive the kids everywhere and all that. Well, then let's look at the time you're streaming, which is typically like 11 o'clock at night till what 3, 4 in the morning, and the amount of
Mm,
alcohol you're drinking. And you're telling me you were sober enough every time, on top of whatever drugs are in your system. I'm completely taking out of the table just on alcohol alone, you weren't putting those kids at risk driving them this stuff because you said you actually drove them. There's several streams that he said he's actually driven the kids, and we know he was up till god awful hours watching the or drinking on stream and everything else. So it's like you're just gonna keep digging yourself in deeper and deeper. So even if that's the case with the father, it's not the case all the time, and you were putting other people at risk. So then it
yeah,
just defaults
that's
right back around to you. You endangered the kids.
yeah. And then the neglect also. Well, I mean, that's the other thing. It's like the more people you rope into this shit, it just like it shows that either the neglect blame could be shared or it could be
Yeah.
centered all around you because you had to rely on them.
Yep.
It's like it could bolster that as being a factor as to how much you fucked up, Nick.
Yeah, exactly. And
But
Jim, I think that's kind of what Gigi was saying is how did you not notice the neglect thing on the on whoever's father it
yeah,
was, his father or her father?
I think he said it was his dad, not
Okay.
because like Kayla's parents would have like you know fucking kicked Nick out of the house if they had known because like I said they hated him and didn't want their daughter to marry him in the first place.
Yeah, and it's just with all
Like,
this, I gotta speculate on how true of a statement that is even to begin with.
well, I mean
If it's not a
that's
way out,
I
you
mean
know.
yeah I know it's just that the most likely parent or grandparent would be Nick's father
Yeah.
because every time like when I heard the story of how Nick and Kayla met and how they got married, it's because that it had to deal with that fucking trust fund and
Yeah.
he had to sign like a document and everything because his in-laws hated him. Because
Yeah.
that's how it's been. I mean, that's the story I first heard like 4 years ago, and then it repeated like three other times over the past 4 years. So it's like it's a story that hasn't changed. So I mean, it seems fairly like factual at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be something. It's going to be a sight to see because it's going to be funny if they do all this and he gets the dad up there, and the first question they're going to ask is, "Hey, did you bring the kids to school or to these extracurricular activities?" And if he goes, "Nope," you don't even got to ask him anything else. He's done. He's not reliable for any neglect or anything else. I mean, you could say, yeah, through whatever holiday visits and stuff like that, maybe they should have noticed, but again, not necessarily
Hmm.
on them. And given a senior state, they could sit there and argue that, their judgment
Well,
wasn't the best with age.
I mean, the only recent holiday that they could have like seen anything like from the in-laws and like Nick Rakieta's own parents would have been Easter.
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, he was looking pretty fucking like rough then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it should have been fucking apparent, and like mold only takes like a month to grow. I mean, and all the other biological facts of how much of a shithole that house turned into, like,
But then it brings up the thing that, like, what if they're going to the parents' house? Well, then, if they're taking the kids, getting the kids cleaned up and everything, the kids are going there for a nice meal. They're going to eat. They're going to be full. They're not going to complain about being hungry. They're probably not going to smell.
yeah,
They're going to be in fresh, nice Sunday, Easter clothes or Christmas clothes, whatever. And then they're
hmm
out of their house, so they're not seeing their conditions. And then Nick's is going to be like, yeah, I've been losing weight and trying to diet and stuff. Like, he's used that excuse a million times on stream. So I could see
Yeah,
a
I mean
lot of it being
that's
excused away, but at the same time, anybody
well, no, 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 no,
logically
no. That
would not excuse it
no,
away.
that would actually convict Nick on the neglect because it would speak to a pattern of keeping up appearances rather than actually taking care of the kids.
Yeah.
Because Sunday mass or whenever they hold it, you got to
Yep.
look clean, pristine. But Sunday school or whatever, like any other like homeschool functions, fuck it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
Like holidays,
I think a lot of it came down to that's where I think and where I'm going with my thought process of the father, his father or her father, regardless of who father it is, it sounds more likely it would be his, but that there
yeah,
likely weren't the ones doing that, and it's a lie. It's just a general lie for him to get excused from putting the kids in a dangerous situation. So then, the minute the father gets up there, I'll be like, no, the last time I saw the kids, they looked good when I saw them on X Sunday service or for X holiday. And it's going to be an automatic, like what you're saying, where it's going to be more of a slam dunk against them because it's like, well, then you did know better. You did know the kids stunk. You did know the kids need to be cleaned up. You did know that, like,
yeah.
their needs were not being
I,
met.
I mean, hell, like the story that I forget who was talking about it, but PPP was like bringing more like information to a story about Christmas with the Raketas and everything, and how Nick and I guess Aaron at the time,
Yeah.
or some of his buddies, decided to just drop the kids off at the grandparents for Christmas,
Yeah.
Christmas morning,
Yep.
and then they went to the fucking casino
Yeah.
for like 3 or 4 hours because they couldn't be fucked to, enjoy the holiday.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you got like several different patterns of behavior that line up with someone who is being distracted by vices and just doesn't get fulfillment out of being with the family. Therefore, you could argue from a psychological standpoint of like leaning towards neglect rather than outright abuse.
Yeah. And then Jim, unfortunately, I don't think you're going to get much out of that situation because the best you would have to go off of that would be the parents sitting there and asking him like, okay, did they show up? Were they drunk when they showed up and all that? I guess it would be more evidence to the credence of their abuse of substances being an effect in their life, but you couldn't sit there and say, well, they were under the influence while they drove because you could sit there and
Well,
say it's been too long to test on top of how
tech,
reliable is this 60, 70, 80-year-old person because I'm assuming their age is somewhere in that range.
technically, technically it would be it would be like an assumption like that would be agreed upon if you have a history of drug use during this time period
Yeah,
that you would have taken drugs because for the prognosis and the damage to be done to the human body there is kind of like
a
a
time
way,
timeline. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, a timeline for like what happens when kind of like the rings on a tree to tell how old it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's definitely that, and then you've got video footage because apparently this church like has cameras everywhere and it, like broadcasts their sermons. Like you'd be able to date the prognosis of how further into the addiction he got,
Yep.
because a lot of people were pulling that up, like when he got up in between services and whatnot on Twitter. Apparently, their YouTube channel got taken down by people who were haranguing him on Nick's side.
Really?
Yeah, that's something that came out. I forget who was talking about it, but apparently that YouTube channel is down now.
Wow.
So there's some fuckery afoot.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I mean,
And I
it
mean,
goes again. Like when I'm thinking about it more and more here, it's been noted that one of the kids was in the car when he wrecked the car, and
yeah,
so it was
that's
probably,
another
I'm
story by
guessing,
his mouth.
yeah, I'm guessing that he was guessing it was the older kid. So the older kid, they may be able to get to testify to, hey, did your dad appear out of it? Did your dad appear like he wasn't quite coherent when he got in this wreck? On
Well,
top of his drug abuse history, it would be likely
it
also
wasn't the
assumed.
16-year-old I heard.
Oh, really?
It was the 10-year-old.
Still, I mean, I could see them. I could see them asking the kid questions, be it through probably like a therapist or something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
but they
So
may
I mean,
actually get the
there's,
kids to say things against them. You never know.
I mean, unless if like Nick can put it into a different position, because I mean, Nick has one too many forces going against him, and they're not like a in conspiracy with each other. They're just the fucking reactions of all of his bad
Yeah,
actions.
yeah.
I mean, I
It's
mean,
almost Murphy's law in an effect.
actually, I was gonna compare it to like the Golem.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
too. Yeah.
the Jews create like a mud automaton to attack their enemies, and it comes back to destroy them and everything.
Yep.
That's basically what Nick has done in a sense, is that he's created this fucking mess to like, show off and like be like, see, I'm better than you, and then it comes back to haunt him.
Yep. Yeah, no, I just think it's going to be interesting because then with that wreck, there would be a police report and everything else. I mean, given that it didn't happen on private property that he was authorized to be on, there would
Yeah,
probably be a
and not
police
to
report.
mention,
So it's not going to be refutable on which kid was there and stuff like that. And
well, I mean, there's a live stream where he retells the story and everything, and plus you've also got like the auto mechanics that had to fix up the damn thing.
oh, they did actually fix it up. Okay.
Yeah, because I forget what he said got damaged other than like the front bumper. I think he said the subframe under the motor too.
I know when I saw it, it looked like he snapped. Now, coming from an automotive understanding, it looked like he snapped a tie rod, and he definitely fucked up
Yeah,
like the front fender, fascia, and probably there would have been warping with the subframe and possibly the hood because I know with all those cars there's a lot of aluminum involved.
yeah. Lightweight construction, crumple zones, all the fucking horse shit that ruins cars.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like there are so many things. Like, I mean, and people have archived this shit, and Kino Casino has gone over it. And regardless of their commentary, like, you want someone who's like genuinely reacting to it or whatnot. I mean, Kino Casino is the place. Like, you could find all those clips, but again, it's just like if you need it for evidentiary, like the actual streams without the commentary from people going over it, that's going to be few and far between unless Alyssa, like, I mean, here's the thing: like, Alyssa's going to get pulled into the fucking courtroom for like
Ooh.
for testifying whether or not this is verifiably accurate information and that none of this has been like edited, unless for like time or whatever, because she has done that with some of the videos where she's like cut out portions of nonsense.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like she has more of a chance of being pulled into this case than like fucking Worski and PPP.
Well, what's going to be interesting too is two things. First of all, I would imagine they could probably subpoena because even if he deletes the stream, I'm sure the data exists for a time period on Rumble servers and even local servers and all that. So it's a matter
Yeah.
of how long they retain that data for. Some places they retain data for a year. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's a couple months, it just depends on what their data storage is. But the other thing that I
You know
saw that
what's
was funny is that there's a high probability of anime Suckscope and Sneed being brought into a court of law.
I mean, I don't know. They'll probably not bring in some rando fucking degenerate.
Well, I'm just
I mean, they
saying
already
to
got.
just show his
I mean, they already got
incoherence at
Nick
that
Rakieta
point,
there.
and the fact that he didn't even recall that he's read this 7 fucking times. So that's where I saw it being brought up, and I was like, there is a high likelihood they might actually have that.